To modern eyes and sensibilities, there's plenty about the original series Trek which looks silly, hopelessly outdated, or just plain dumb. I mean, need I say more than, brain, what is brain? But let's not fault the whole series for the flaws of individual episodes. And I'm not talking about how the show looks almost 60 years outside its original context. Many of its failings are attributed to the relentless grind of time, the social conventions of the era, the oddities of media conventions, fashion, and the change in film technology that affected everything from lighting, makeup, color, and optical effects. Yesterday's state of the art isn't dumb at all, it's just antique. Let's look at the bigger picture, the stuff that spans multiple episodes, seasons, or permeates the show's entire run. In other words, what's dumb in the series as a series? So don't touch that dial, cause I'm Bree from TrekCulture, and tune in with me as we boldly look at 10 of the dumbest things in Star Trek the original series. Number 10. Kirk, landing party of 3. Kirk. In the Apple, after Spock nearly dies attempting to save him, Captain Kirk says, "Trying to get yourself killed? Do you know how much Starfleet has invested in you?" Spock replies, 122,200, and would have recited the full amount to multiple decimal places had Kirk not cut him off. It makes one wonder then, just how much has Starfleet invested in Kirk, and how he rationalizes putting himself, Spock, and even McCoy, the ship's senior staff, in harm's way, adventure after adventure. Yes, it's typical for the leads of action-adventure shows to place themselves in harm's way before each commercial break. Star Trek brought to you by Polaroid and by Viceroy for the taste that's right any time of the day. They're the stars, and they're paid handsomely to be in the front and center. But the way Trek does it is, well, full-hearted. It's one thing when it's men from Uncle or Rancher on Bonanza, just to name 2 contemporaries, but it's preposterous when Kirk has 427 other crew and specialists aboard his ginormous starship that he has at his beck and call. The M5 had it right when it left Kirk and McCoy off of a landing party recommendation, characterizing them as non-essential personnel for the mission at hand. This is what led to the Next Generation's away team concept, where the captain would sit firmly in the comfy chair, no soft cushions though, and send some junior officers into danger. Well, at least until they decided to make Patrick Stewart go all Kirk when they realized he was way more popular than Riker. Number 9. Perfect parallels. One of the fundamental flaws in the original series pitch was the similar worlds concept, which suggested the starship would visit civilizations very much like those of Earth, allowing the show to save money by not building anything excessive. This idea was so baked into the show's primordial DNA that it appeared as far back as the unfilmed second pilot script of The Omega Glory, from 15 months before the series hit the air. In it, Spock remarks, "You'll note that Hodgson's law of planetary evolution is supported here. Similar zoological and botanical conditions produce quite similar clothing and similar architecture." And yes, I know this was later renamed to Hodgkin's Law of Parallel Planetary Development in Bread and Circuses, please don't come at me. The show played this restriction out in multiple ways. The vaguely believable include Earthling-contaminated cultures in Patterns of Force and A Piece of the Action, and the alien-seeded Earth descendants of the Paradise Syndrome. The preposterous run the gambit from the inexplicable duplicate Earth in Miri to the too-close-for-words world of Return of the Archons. There's also the aforementioned Omega Glory and Bread and Circuses. This category is ridiculous even assuming cultures might develop along similar lines because of the specificity of it all. Like, why would the Ecosians copy every aspect of earthly Third Reich down to the alien iconography and design of the cars? How? Why does the civilization on Beta 3 not just have late 19th century American structures, but Earth clothing contemporary with that society? And have clocks with 12 hours and 60 minutes each? Frankly, this demonstrates a lack of imagination from the show's makers. When you rent a backlot, the props and costumes don't come with it, so why not mix things up a little more? Like, why not Nazi armbands on some other fascist-looking uniform rented from a Western costume? You could do clocks with 10-hour days. Omega-4's construction and Old Glory flag are imperfect analogs. The stories are allegories, so why aren't these strange new worlds also allegories? Why aren't they, a little strange? Number 8. The dilithium crystals. As demonstrated in Mudd's Women, The Alternative Factor, and Ellen of Troyes, without a handful of these crystals, the USS Enterprise becomes the USS Just Can't Even. It's stated that all the ship's power is channeled through them, and without them the ship can't even maintain an orbit. They not only regulate power flow, but they store energy. What? How many crystals the ship requires is unclear. Mudd's Women refers to 4 being lost, but Kirk asks for 6 from the miners. So we might assume 4 replacements and 2 spares. In The Alternative Factor, we see 2 each in the 2 drawers Lieutenant Masters has open. But there are 6 drawers, which suggests 12 crystals. In the engineering muddle that is Ellen of Troyes, we see a single burnt paddle crystal in a frame, but Scotty refers to the crystals plural. The silly thing about the crystals is they're essential for just about everything, but the ship doesn't appear to carry any spares. But why? Harry Mudd describes them as worth 300 times their weight in diamonds, thousands of times their weight in gold. However, in Cat's Paw, Kirk dismisses platters of precious gems, saying, "We could manufacture a ton of these on our ship. They mean nothing to us." Plus, Kirk is authorized to offer a fair price for 6 of them, so they can't be impossibly expensive to Starfleet. If that's the case, then why not carry a closet full of them as standard equipment? Is Starfleet really willing to risk losing top-of-the-line starships for the equivalent of a spare tire? If so, that's just dumb. Number 7. The God Things. Star Trek had a problem of falling back on the same story gimmicks over and over again. This was commented on both by NBC and within the show's offices. Example: one pet peeve of NBC's was the number of times doppelgangers appeared in Season 1. These were The Man Trap, The Enemy Within, What Are Little Girls Made Of, and the 2 Lazaruses of the incomprehensible The Alternative Factor. The network put the show on notice that they would not approve any more scripts that year featuring duplicates. But the show's most tired go-to gimmick was beings with godlike abilities. In the first season alone, we've got the absolute power, absolutely corrupted Gary Mitchell, raging super teen Charlie Evans, very bad boy Trelane, the Metrons, the hyper-evolved non-corporeal Organians, and the Telosians who created convincing illusions at many light-years distance. In Season 2, we get a literal Greek god in Apollo or Adonis, and the Quatlu-betting providers of the Game Masters of Triskelion in the Game Masters of Triskelion, who pluck Kirk, Uhura, and Chekhov off of the ship at a distance of over 11 light-years and later immobilize the starship with no effort. Season 3 gives us the hate-eating pinwheel of Day of the Dove, which can do whatever the plot requires. The trouble with the God Thing trope is that it's fresh maybe once, but afterwards it's dulled by repetition. And it's a narrative cheat, often requiring Deus Ex Machina solutions to resolve the story, such as Trelane's negligent parents or the Organians showing their hand at the last second to stop a war. Number 6. Swiss Army Spock. TrekCulture put an article out back in the day about 9 times Spock got a power-up, but Spock's numerous upgrades rendered him increasingly superhuman. Their multiplying abilities were akin to the opening of the $6 Million Man, making Spock better, stronger, faster, to the point of absurdity. He was 3 times as strong as a human when the script called for it, or when the writers remembered it. He had better hearing, he could knock people out with a pinch. He had an eyesight-saving inner eyelid. His mental discipline allowed him to ignore pain that drove humans to insanity and death. He was less affected by aging than his colleagues. He could handle higher heat and lower oxygen content than a human, but conversely was more capable than McCoy of surviving a blizzard in Ice Age conditions. Oh god, there's still more. He could mind meld or mind touch or whatever they called it in a given episode with just about any given life form. It got to the point where he'd pull information out of thin air without even consulting any instruments, and pedantically reported time increments so small that it would be incorrect by the time the sound waves from his mouth reached anyone's ears. In short, he became boringly superhuman, with his only Achilles heel being his refusal to accept that human emotions had value. He was a human Vulcan Swiss Army knife capable of whatever a given story required, no matter how dumb. Number 5. Stealing the Enterprise. Kirk loses control of the Enterprise to interlopers numerous times over the course of 3 seasons. He also loses it to renegade Spock in the Menagerie Part 1, to drunk Kevin Riley, and to the nutjob M5 computer. One such incident would cost him his command. 9 times, one in each of the 9 episodes, and he'd be lucky to be mopping up Plomeek soup in the Vulcan dorms of Starfleet Academy. What's really stupid about this is just how easily it's accomplished. The worst instance is Kirk just being foolish. He effectively hands the keys to Khan in Space Seed by giving the sketchy, unforthcoming eugenics throwback unfettered access to the ship's technical data and posting a single guard to keep him in his room. The others? The Kelvins of by any other name just turn the crew into paperweights and take over. Android Norman of I Mud overrides the systems. The Zippy Scalosians of wink of an eye just move too fast to be seen or countered. The space hippies of The Way to Eden are just smarter than they look. The brats of And the Children Shall Lead have a space gorgon in a shower curtain giving them mind control powers. And both the pinwheel alien of Day of the Dove and the racist Belle of Let That Be Your Last Battlefield can take control by thought alone. What's especially dumb is that something as complicated as a starship should have dozens of ways to thwart a takeover, many fully automatic. Antagonists who overcome such security measures raise the stakes. Those you just hold the door open for, not so much. Number 4. Kirk versus computer. And speaking of tired repetition, there's this classic trope. Over the course of the series, Kirk caused the utter destruction of several overzealous computers and the disabling and reprogramming of 2 others. Kirk takes the direct approach a few times and blows up the war computers in A Taste of Armageddon, and has the Enterprise phaser blast Val in The Apple. He tries this phaser tactic on the Landru computer in The Return of the Archons, but when thwarted, talks it to self-immolation instead. He repeats his talk-it-to-death tricks on the M5 supercomputer and Nomad space probe in the Ultimate Computer and the Changeling, respectively. He confuses imperfect androids in What Are Little Girls Made Of, resulting in them destroying one another. He and the crew also put a melt 'em down with logic variation on the androids of I Mud, and especially the CPU-like Norman, but didn't destroy them in the process for a change, so there's that. The only time he doesn't try the phaser it or talk it to death approach is with the Oracle of the People of For the World is Hollow and I Have Touched the Sky, which Spock manages to turn off and fix. It actually took until the motion picture for Kirk to meet a computer he couldn't overwhelm or outsmart, which was about 12 years too late. Number 3. Game Changers Forgotten. Star Trek was overall relatively consistent where its core technology was concerned. The warp drive had speed limits, the transporter was relatively short range and couldn't beam across interplanetary or interstellar distances. The phasers stunned, exploded, and vaporized things, or could be overloaded to blow up. But things got dicier when individual episodes invented techniques or technology to solve a problem of the week, which were often forgotten in subsequent segments and never used or referenced again. Some examples are the truth serum mentioned in The Man Trap, and the psycho tricorder of Wolf in the Fold could have been handy in other adventures. The time warp causing engine implosion in The Naked Time was never repeated for temporal shenanigans, instead replaced by the slingshot effect. The engine mods that let the Enterprise travel at ludicrous speeds in By Any Other Name were apparently undone as if they never happened. The telekinetic powers obtained in Plato's Stepchildren, or the superspeed via Scalosians in Wink of an Eye, are likewise forgotten, handy as they might have been in a pinch. And the one that ought to have been standard issue instead of one and done, the subcutaneous implants allowing the crew to be located and beamed out when their communicators are inevitably taken in patterns of force, is just never seen again. Number 2. Telepathy. From a scientific perspective, telepathy is effectively paranormal nonsense. It was once highly popular in literary science fiction, experiencing a boom in the 1950s and 60s, but it gradually migrated into science fantasy and fantasy. However, most TV and film science fiction lag behind literary trends. Consequently, telepathy and telekinesis were prevalent in television and more science fiction during the 60s and 70s and into the 80s, but with time were increasingly replaced by technological communication methods. So, I hear you saying, what's so dumb about it? Firstly, think about communication protocols. Is thought a universal language? One might argue that Spock's hybrid nature enables him to use his Vulcan mind powers to access both human and Vulcan brains. However, he also uses it to send suggestions to a humanoid inhabitant of Amenier 7 through a wall. While this might be vaguely plausible, he performs the same feat on a Kelvin from another galaxy. Most unbelievably, though, his carbon-based brain is somehow thought-compatible with entirely alien forms of life, such as non-corporeal Ambassador Kolos, the silicon-based Horta, and even the wholly mechanical Nomad in The Changeling. Secondly, Star Trek sometimes portrays telepathy as instantaneous. Spock senses the deaths of 400 Vulcans in another sector in the Immunity Syndrome. In All Our Yesterdays, he finds himself in the past of a distant planet, yet is immediately affected by the far-off Vulcans of that epoch. It's almost as if he's connected to some faster-than-light interstellar Vulcan Wi-Fi. Number 1. The Sexism. Former Desilu VP Herb Solow summed it up in the book Inside Star Trek, writing, "And in most instances, the characters they portrayed were emotionally subordinate to the men of Star Trek. Women were, essentially, sex objects, always ready for action. And they were the antithesis of the actresses starring in the other dramatic television series of that era. Barbara Bain of Mission Impossible, Amanda Blake in Gunsmoke, Barbara Anderson in Ironside, Stephanie Powers, the girl from U.N.C.L.E., and of course Barbara Stanwyck of Big Valley, all playing characters of substantial independence and distinction." And he's right. Even though many other shows were undeniably sexist, Star Trek made a point about women being equals to men, and repeatedly fell down on the job. In the first pilot, both the clinical number 1 and the fresh-faced yeoman both fantasize about the captain. Yeoman Rand fusses over Kirk, makes coffee in emergencies, and even feels bad for accusing Kirk after his evil duplicate assaults her. In Miri, while they suffer from a soon-to-be fatal disease, she cries for Kirk to look at her legs, and when abducted, only asks, "What are you going to do with me?" instead of using her wits to try and persuade her child captors, or even to gather information. Nurse Chapel is entirely defined by her unrequited passion for Mr. Spock. Yeoman Barrows has fantasies about a no-means-yes Don Juan. Marla McGivers lets Khan endanger over 400 lives and seize control of a starship capable of subjugating entire planets, all because she has the hots for men who dare to take what they want. Carolyn falls head over heels for Apollo and resists helping save the crew because it would break the Greek god's heart. McCoy anticipates this, saying, "On the other hand, she's a woman. All woman. One day she'll find the right man and off she'll go. out of the service. Ugh. Spock's no better, once saying, "And I suspect preys on women because women are more easily and more deeply terrified, generating more sheer horror than the men of the species." Double Hell, even the robots get in on the misogyny. When Nomad encounters Uhura, it says that the unit is defective and its thinking is chaotic. Absorbing it unsettles him, and it's a mass of conflicting impulses. And the series even ends on a sour note with the horridly misogynistic turnabout intruder, which is both too dumb and too offensive to waste time on here. Sexism is beyond dumb, especially so on Star Trek. Now that we've gotten that out of our system, I've been Bree from TrekCulture, and those were 10 of the dumbest things in Star Trek the original series. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more like it, then feel free to subscribe. We're always putting out new content. And if you liked this video, then give it a thumbs up, it really does help. If you like us and want to follow us elsewhere, we're across various social medias with the handle TrekCulture or TrekCultureYT. And if you want to follow me, you can find me across most social medias with the handle TrekkieBree. But until next time, have a great rest of your day, and don't forget to live long and prosper.